we're going to talk to Todd, pronouns he, him, calling in from tight necks. Gotta stretch them out. I don't know. Who is a theist who is asking, can you believe in any kind of deity based on probability? Todd, you are on the line with Forrest and Aaron. How you doing?
Hey, pretty good. What's going on, fellas?
I'm all right myself.
Hey. So my question is, first of all, I've been watching y'all's show for a while. I watch a lot of Matt Dillahunty on his debates, also his show with y'all. And, I've probably logged over 200 hours now on my research, just on him alone. And there is no doubt about it. There is no way to prove the existence of a deity, much less a Christian God. You just can't do it. I don't even understand anymore why people keep trying, because it always is going to come down to faith. But my question would be, if you looked at it from a probability standpoint of, you cannot prove that there's a God or disprove a God. I mean, that's kind of where we're at, I would think, is no one can prove that there is one. No one can prove that there isn't one for lack of evidence. So could you not look at that as a 50-50 split and say, well, gambling odds, I'd like to take my chances and believe in any kind of a God if it can't be disproved. I mean, is that even rational at all? What would you say to that?
No, it's
still not rational in any way.
I have a couple of questions, but it looks like, Aaron, you have a question first.
Yeah. So when you say that, we're going to treat this probabilistically, well, the thing is, even if something is you don't know, you can still try to put some bounds on those probabilities. And honestly, that's how all science works anyways. Everything we have, we'll have probabilities of something being true or false so absurdly high or low that for all practical purposes, it's 100% or 0%. But it's always bound. And to me, I find the God proposition, when you look at all the various properties that gods are supposed to have, or even just some of the basic ones, namely a mind without a physical body, because I can look out and find lots of minds without physical bodies and not a single example of a bodiless mind. That, I think, has to go into the way I make the initial calculation. And if we just stick with just Homo sapiens, just how many humans have been around, because we're pretty sure humans have minds. At least the humans I've talked to seem like they have minds. They definitely have bodies. And I can count up, well, how many humans have there been, Homo sapien humans? And that's roughly 100 billion. So we have literally 100 billion samples of minds. All of them have been embodied. So when you tell me there exists a non-bodied mind, I'd say, well, just based on that prior research of knowing about humans, that means the prior probability starts out at 1 in 100 billion, which would be way lower than 50-50.
Right.
Yeah, I've got several.
The most generic sort of God of all. I'm just saying, just a mind without a body, let alone being spaceless, timeless, performing miracles, having something to do with your afterlife, caring about the shape of your genitals, all those sorts of things that are really particular and even less well evidenced. Just takes whatever that prior is and just keeps digging the hole. So I guess the question is, do you even have a reason to think it's 50-50?
Yeah. Well, I guess I would look at it, even if the percentage was as small as you can imagine getting to without hitting zero, that still would be irrational. Correct? In y'all's opinion?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a few things here that you said. Is it number one, you talked about you can't prove this one way or another. So it is an unfalsifiable claim, which Aaron just touched on.
Right.
So
I got you.
Do you give the same credence to any other unfalsifiable claim? Do you believe that it's a 50-50 belief system, just totally pick and choose if we live in a simulation, or if you're a brain in a vat, or if you're actually insane in an asylum right now thinking you're having this conversation? Those are also unfalsifiable claims. That doesn't mean that there's a 50-50 chance. It doesn't mean that they're rational. None of that.
Right. Right.
You also, something else that Aaron talked about that was really important is you say you've called in and you talked to Matt a bunch and you studied a bunch all about the Christian God. So it's not even just saying there's a God. It's, I know what the God's name is, and I know what kind of food it
Right.
wants you to eat, and I know that it uses he, him pronouns, and I know who it wants me having sex with. And like there's a lot more there than just maybe a thing exists. It's maybe this one particular thing in the Bronze Age slave owning manual exists. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
And so like that's to say that and then say, well, it's 50-50 chance because it can't be proven is the same as saying there's a 50-50 chance in the tooth bunny exists because I can't prove it doesn't.
Understand.
And therefore it's this crazy thing. So like, why is that good enough for you? Why is, if you're saying that this is totally based on faith and you're calling in as a theist, why is faith good enough for you in this case where I don't think it would ever be good enough in pretty much any other case?
No. Well, I will say this. The only other next part of this is I believe I'm getting to the point now where I believe all religion is strictly man-made for, obviously I think it's for comfort. It's for emotional comfort of things that we can't explain. We don't like dealing with death and what comes after. So even, if you were doing all this for emotional comfort, is that irrational? I mean, because people do a lot of things for emotional comfort, whether it be alcohol, drugs, therapy, the list goes on and on. Maybe eating too much, overeating. People find comfort in a lot of different things. So what about it?
Right.
If you're just doing that for comfort reasons, is that just absolutely crazy that somebody would do that?
So you drew a comparison to overeating, drugs, alcohol, all sorts of abuse. You can see how faith is also a problem. If those are the comparisons you're drawing, then surely you agree with us. Then yeah, faith is a drug. It's a poison that you're putting into your mind, convincing yourself of things that are not real in order to make yourself think that maybe the universe might just be specially designed with you in mind in order to escape what? Fear of death, fear of nothingness, fear of meaninglessness.
Right.
None of those things need to be frightening. They just need to be dealt with.
Yeah.
And so, it is irrational. And I'm not going to say it's crazy or insane or anything like that, because that's a silly thing to say. But it is certainly a problem. And it's not a necessary problem either.
I will put in one
think y'all would
caveat
have
that there could be a tiny bit of rationality to at least outwardly say you believe, not because of the afterlife, but because in this life, because basically if you have neighbors, that will be problematic if you are not with the masses on this sort of question. That's a situation where you could say that it would at least be rational to outwardly make those confessions. But ultimately, if you internally think there's no good reason to believe it, that there's no actual evidence for it, and if anything against it, then it is inherently irrational, or at least it's a non-rationally held belief.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say
I didn't realize,
in general, true is better than useful in pretty much all cases.
Right. I guess another way I was going to say about that was kind of looking at it from a my body, my choice, whatever, what's my mind. If I want to use this to cope with whatever, I have that choice. But I do see that when I gave those points, I kind of answered my own question. When I was making those comparisons to the drugs and alcohol.
Nobody's saying you don't have the...
I appreciate you I appreciate you throwing that out there. That was good.
Yeah. Nobody's saying you don't have the choice. We're just saying it's a terrible choice to make. And so like in the same way that like, not to get into a totally different political discussion, but like to stick on the idea of drugs and alcohol, I fully support like total just decriminalization and legalization of all those things. I think everybody should be able to do whatever drugs they want if they're an adult and they want to do drugs. I still think it's a terrible, stupid thing to do. And I think people should be educated on why that sucks and why you shouldn't be doing that. I just don't think it's reasonable to put people in prison for it. Similarly, so again, I'm not trying to get into that whole discussion. I'm just giving an example. Similarly, same thing here with this. I don't care what people, have access to believing. I think that you should have access to all sorts of ideas. I think people should be encouraged to explore terrible ideas and be taught about terrible ideas, be taught about ideologies that led to horrible things and horrible outcomes, so that they know how better to recognize other terrible ideologies and thought patterns. And that way they don't fall into those things again and again. The reason why we teach about, atrocities throughout history, about slavery and genocide and murder and all these different things, is so that people can recognize that shit and say, okay, so this is a way of thinking that is clearly not functional, and here's why it sucks. And so I think exploring religions and exploring different philosophies and different theistic ideas and claims and like pseudoscience and all these things, they should be out there. People should know about them. People should talk about them. They should not be believing them. And we should be explaining why you should not be believing them.
I got you. Last question. Would you have a different opinion? I don't know if I should say opinion or respect for the Christian community as a whole. If everybody hypothetically were to say, hey, we understand we can't prove this, but, going off just like the reason of the comfort thing, we choose to do it anyway, regardless. I mean, if there was just some form of admittance that, hey, we understand it's not, we can't prove it. I mean, would that change your opinion at all, or would you just still be in the same boat of,
If anything, it might make it worse. I
really?
would still say your beliefs are still harmful, and they are doing harm to you, and they are doing harm to your community, and they are doing harm to the world at large. And therefore, I still have a problem with it. And now I have even less respect because you don't even think you're right. You don't even think that you know something that I don't. You don't even have the benefit of saying I misunderstand science and therefore I think it's ridiculous, or I misunderstand the atheist position, therefore I don't think it's tenable. I am going based on my best logic, my best assumption, my best understanding of the world, and coming to a conclusion that you disagree with and think is atrocious. That I can at least give courtesy to. But to say, yeah, I know it's bullshit, but fuck it. That's putting that on the back of, actually, I think that it was really cool that there's this monster in the sky that drowned everybody in the world because he fucked up his own design so bad. And I think that if you're gay, you deserve to burn for all eternity. And I think women should be subservient to men and not speak or hold positions of power. And I think this, and I think that. But, I just don't fucking care why. I just do. That, I think, deserves a lot less respect, if anything.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I was raised in a Christian home. I've obviously come to the realization that I was indoctrinated by all of this as I've gotten older. I'm 42 years old. I'm trying to read the Bible from a non-biased point of view, and when I do that and I listen to everything y'all say, I mean, there's just no doubt about it. It's not something that's realistic to me in any way. But I still think in the whole deconstructing, it's very hard to come to grips with things. And, definitely there's that fear factor of what if I'm wrong? I think that's the problem. That's the biggest fear from any Christian, whether they want to say it or not, is, if they were trying to let go, is what if I'm wrong?
And what if you're wrong about Islam?
It's put on you that... Right. It's, there's just this whole scare tactic that's been invented. And,
that's why it's so popular. That is why in the year of our Dark Lord 2024, we still have these Bronze Age ideals being pushed on children, because it is a cycle of abuse. All these religions use abuse to spread. They scare the hell out of kids and tell them that they are wicked and evil and sinful and bad and broken by the very nature of their birth and existence. They are already corrupted to the point of irredeemable, just terror and nightmare and evil. And the best, most moral thing that could possibly happen is that they burn for all eternity. The definition of morality, goodness incarnate, is going to send them to a lake of fire. And that is a good thing, because they are so evil just because of how they were born. But we love you, and you need to do XYZ thing otherwise, and then you can be saved. And that's this twisted mockery of love that you're offered at such a young and vulnerable age. And people who are abused in that way are likely to then turn around and abuse some other children because they think that it's good, because they've been taught that it's good by other people who were abused. It's a cycle of abuse.
Right.
It's absolutely horrible. And I understand what you're feeling. We have people call in every day feeling these same things. But you need to wonder why you don't feel the same thing about literally every other religion. And even if you're a Christian, there are over 40,000 denominations of Christianity alone, 40,000 different flavors of your religion, many of which believe all the other ones are wrong and are going to hell regardless of their faith, regardless of their acts, regardless of anything. They are going to hell because they're not in this one out of the other 40,000. So you may not be the right kind of Christian. The other versions of the Christian gods can be the ones that can judge you. And you don't fear those either.
Right. Well, you just made me think of something else that I've never even thought about before when you were talking about the children. Obviously, I know there's a separation between, church and state and, things of that nature. But, I mean, if you had a chance to put an age limit on when it would be allowed legally to, teach religion, I mean, what kind of age would you put on that?
I wouldn't. I don't think that's ethical. No, you should never.
If we're definitely talking in the school systems, for example, I think what we would do is not teach any one religion, but we would teach basically, here's the diversity of beliefs within humans. And so here's all sorts of religions that exist now. Here's all sorts of religions that existed in the past. And it's worth knowing is like what the difference between a Catholic and a Protestant is, and understand how those divisions came about. Difference between Confucianism and Buddhism, to understand things going on in the East, and so on. You wouldn't understand the world if you didn't teach the existence of religion to children. The only difference is, do you teach them that one particular version, one very sectarian version, is absolutely true, and the other ones not only are false but must be suppressed? That's where we get in trouble.
Yeah, I'm never going to say that there should be a limit on ideas of it's period. I don't think that there should ever be a limit on what ideas can be spread, when they can be spread, anything like that. Of course, there's certain tiers in what is appropriate to teach a kid. So, like, for example, if I wanted to teach physics to first graders, I wouldn't come in there talking about general relativity. I would come in there talking about, look, when I drop this marker, it falls. That's called gravity. Let's talk about that. So same thing with religion. If someone wants to explain religion to any child of any age, that's fine. Some people believe these things, and here's why they believe these things. That's not a big deal. And that's very different than laying on, threats of eternal torture and talking to them, telling young girls that they are temptresses and Jezebels because they showed their shoulders at a family function. Like those types of things, I think should be societally, socially stigmatized. But I certainly would never try to pass any kind of a law telling people what you can or cannot tell your children.
I got you. Yeah.
I have a question for you, Todd, before we move on.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Oh, no, if you have more for me, my question is...
I was just going to say, I totally understand where you're coming from. I understand we can't put those kind of laws into place. It was just kind of an hypothetical,
Yeah, there's a difference between education and indoctrination, and we need to be focusing more on education.
Right.
My question for you, Todd, is I have on the call screen here that you called in last Sunday with the exact same question as an agnostic. And our call screener also has a note here that you've called in a bunch of times as an atheist, as an agnostic, as a theist, as all sorts of things. So what's going on with your journey, man? Are you asking the same questions from different positions to try to explore them? Are you changing your own mind a whole bunch? What's going on with you?
No, I've only called in twice. Last week was my first, and I told him I was, I was trying to explain to him the same way. It's kind of hard to label myself. I think since last week, I've kind of been able to label myself a little bit better. Last week I was pretty much trying to say I was a theist agnostic. I just wasn't thinking of it that way. I guess in my mind, I had kind of felt like I wasn't sure on really what I was. I don't want to denounce Christ, at the same time, I don't want to, say I'm an atheist. At the same time, I was kind of looking at it like maybe I'm just agnostic. Maybe there is something out there, and I don't want to close the book on it, so to speak. Yeah, I want to leave it open, until I know for sure. So I guess that's kind of where I am. Is I'm not ready to close the book just yet. I will say this: I don't, as far as reading the Bible and the Christian religion, I believe historically a lot of those things are accurate as far as people and places and things of that nature. I don't believe the miraculous things about it anymore. I don't see any proof for that. So I think at best we can look at it, from a historical standpoint sometime as far as, certain people go. But that's about as far as you can go with it.
Was Christ a good person?
So was Christ a good person?
Yeah. If he was who he says he was he a good person?
I don't know. I guess you would have to say he's not a good person if he was claiming to be God, and he wasn't. So
if he was actually the Son of God, if he was who he said he was he a good person?
He was the Son of God.
It's not what I asked.
I'm not. It's very hard for me to answer that. I know where y'all are going to come from. I would assume I would know, because the God of the Old Testament does not paint a very loving picture of himself. And if he's on board with that same, deity, then obviously he's not either.
He said that not a jot or tittle of the law shall change, and that he comes not to change the law but to enforce it. He comes not bearing peace but a sword. He comes to set brother against brother, that no one should love him unless they hate their own parents. He said a lot of things, and I'm just curious to know if you think that, and he said some good stuff too. I'm curious to know if you think the good things that he said outweigh the bad, is all.
I don't know. I think I'm, still going to have to do my own reading to come to that conclusion. I mean, based off of everything y'all have taught, yeah, I'm on board. I agree with you completely. But I do think I will admit I haven't read everything, word for word for myself yet either. So, I need to do that. And that's the journey I'm on. And even though I don't, and even though I'm already kind of at my place, I'm still going to continue to read through, whether it's a true story or not. I want to know what I'm talking about.
I hope you have fun reading, because denouncing Christ is fun and cool. And maybe we'll get there together sometime. Anyway, Todd, we're going to move on to the next call, but I appreciate you calling in and talking to us today.
Hey, thank you, sir. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Happy Sunday.
Eric, do you want to learn how to Mongolian throat sing? Check this out.
No, I don't. No, keep that shit to yourself. Don't hear it.
Anyway, thanks for watching that clip. Patreon.com/calltheline is where you could support us. And maybe you should subscribe and like the video, because it was a killer video. Or maybe it wasn't. Was it a Forrest video? If this was a Forrest video, you don't have to click like. If it was an Eric video, go ahead and click dislike.